Have you ever had one of those mornings that feels completely ordinary, so peaceful that you never sense the storm brewing on the horizon? That was exactly my situation. I was sitting on my porch, enjoying a hot cup of coffee, when a teenage boy couldn't have been more than 16 strode right up my driveway and pointed directly at my Harley. "I'll take that one," he announced, as calmly as if he were ordering a sandwich at a deli. At first, I assumed it was a prank. I actually chuckled, waiting for the punchline, but the kid's face remained stone cold serious. "I mean it," he insisted. "Mom told me you'd hand it over. She already spoke to the HOA." I carefully placed my mug on the railing. "Come again?" He folded his arms and tilted his head toward the end of the cul-de-sac. That's when I spotted her Karen, the undisputed ruler of our homeowners association, standing there with her arms crossed, oversized sunglasses perched on her nose like she was overseeing a foreclosure sale. She gave me a cheerful little wave, as if we were old pals catching up. "You've got the wrong idea, son," I said to the boy. He let out an exaggerated sigh. "She told me he hardly rides it these days, and the noise disturbs everyone. Just go get it." Let me set the record straight. I ride that bike every single weekend without fail. I've owned that Harley for 12 solid years. I customized every inch of it with my own hands. It isn't merely transportation, it's an extension of my identity. No one, and certainly not some overreaching HOA tyrant, was going to strip it away from me. I marched across the grass toward Karen, who had now planted herself on my lawn as though she owned the deed to it. "Care to explain what's going on here?" She didn't flinch. "That motorcycle is nothing but an eyesore," she declared, "and the engine is so loud it shakes windows up and down the street. The board has discussed it. You really ought to donate it to someone who would truly value it, and by someone, you mean your son." "Precisely," she replied without hesitation. "He turns 17 next month. It would be ideal for him." I couldn't help it, I burst out laughing. "You've completely lost touch with reality." That's when her demeanor hardened. "Very well," she said coolly. "If you refuse to act like a good neighbor, I'll have to take further steps." At the time, I had no idea what further steps entailed, but I would learn soon enough. It would involve flashing police lights, escalating HOA threats, and an eventual meeting with the state attorney's office. I wasn't about to let anyone bully me, not her spoiled kid, and definitely not the HOA. If they were itching for a battle, they had chosen the absolute wrong opponent. It was the very next Saturday when the situation escalated from ridiculous to utterly unhinged. I had just returned from a relaxing ride, warm sun on my shoulders, wind rushing past, the Harley purring perfectly beneath me. I pulled into my usual spot beneath the big oak tree beside the garage. I hadn't even removed my helmet when the wail of sirens cut through the air. 2 patrol cars screeched into my driveway as if I'd committed a felony. Doors flew open, and 2 officers emerged, hands resting near their holsters. "Sir, step away from the motorcycle immediately." I stood there stunned. "Pardon me? Step away from the vehicle right now." I raised my hands and backed up slowly, cooperating fully despite my confusion. "Is something wrong, officer?" One pulled out a notepad. "We received a report of stolen property at this address. A resident claims you are in unlawful possession of a motorcycle that rightfully belongs to her minor child." I nearly dropped my helmet. "You've got to be kidding me. This is my motorcycle. The registration is inside the house. I've owned it for more than 10 years. Right on cue, Karen came striding across the street as though she'd been directing the entire scene from her living room window. Her son followed close behind, arms crossed in righteous indignation. "There it is," she yelled, jabbing a finger at my bike like she was identifying evidence in a lineup. "That's the exact one. He promised to give it to my son and then reneged. That's theft, isn't it?" I laughed again, certain this had to be some elaborate joke. The officers, however, were not amused. "Do you have proof of ownership?" "Absolutely," I replied, starting toward the house. "It's all inside." "Sir, remain where you are," the second officer ordered, positioning himself between me and my front door. "We'll retrieve the documents. Just tell us where they are." With my permission, they entered the house. While they were inside, Karen sidled up to me, wearing the smuggest grin imaginable. "You could have simply done the decent thing," she whispered. "Now, everyone in the neighborhood will see what kind of person you truly are." I bit my tongue and stayed calm. The officers returned minutes late, are holding my title and registration. "It's definitely his," one announced, clearly irritated by the waste of time. "Clean title, registered in his name for years." Karen's triumphant smile evaporated. Her son scowled deeper. "This isn't right, he told me I could have it." "I never said any such thing," I shot back, flustered. Karen switched strategies on the spot. "Fine. Maybe he didn't steal it, but he misled us. That's fraud." Even the police had reached their limit. After they departed, no charges, no citations, just two exasperated cops. Karen stormed off toward her house with her son trailing sulkily behind. I knew better than to assume it was over. Someone like Karen doesn't back down quietly. Sure enough, 3 days later, a letter appeared taped to my front door. It was an official HOA notice of violation, citing community disruption and failure to adhere to neighborhood courtesy standards. In essence, Karen had lodged a formal complaint alleging that my motorcycle constituted a nuisance, that I had entered into a verbal agreement to transfer ownership to her son, and that my supposedly hostile behavior was poisoning the community atmosphere. I wanted to laugh, but the humor had long since drained away. This wasn't mere nosy neighbor nonsense anymore. This was a calculated campaign to pressure me into surrendering property that was legally, morally, and emotionally mine. So picked up the phone, not to the HOA, and certainly not to Karen. I called an old acquaintance named M. Ark, who worked in the state attorney's office. We weren't best friends, but we'd both been part of the same veterans support group several years earlier. I laid out the entire saga, the boy's bold demand, the fabricated theft report, and now this latest HOA maneuver. Mark listened carefully, then responded gravely. "It sounds like she's attempting to misuse the HOA to coerce a private property transfer. That goes beyond simple harassment, it could qualify as civil coercion." Those words sharpened my focus. He recommended I prepare a detailed written statement, gather every piece of supporting evidence, photos of the bike, proof of long-term ownership, the HOA violation notice, and bring it all in for official review. I spent the next day assembling a comprehensive file. I even pulled footage from my doorbell camera, capturing the moment the kid pointed at my Harley and declared, "Mom said you'd give it to me." That clip alone felt like solid gold. When I finally walked into the state attorney's office carrying that thick folder, I felt fully armed and ready for whatever came next. The receptionist's eyes widened slightly when I mentioned I was dropping off review materials, until she caught sight of the thick folder in my hands. A few days later, Mark rang me back. "She actually filed a complaint with our office too," he said. "Alleged you attempted to defraud her son with phony promises about the motorcycle. We've examined everything from both angles, and there's a possibility this heads to mediation. But relax, you're no longer the one in the hot seat." That's when it fully hit me. Karen had picked a fight with entirely the wrong person, and now the law was firmly in my corner. The HOA meeting was scheduled for Thursday night. Under normal circumstances, I'd have skipped it entirely. This time, though, I arrived early, dressed neatly, carrying my folder, and wearing a relaxed, confident smile. Karen was already there, presiding over a small cluster of board members as if she ran the whole neighborhood. Her son lounged nearby, arms tightly crossed, wearing the expression of someone convinced the universe had personally cheated him out of a bike. She noticed me entering and rolled her eyes dramatically. "Oh, look who decided to grace us with his presence. Wouldn't miss it for the world," I answered evenly, taking my seat as other residents filed in. Once the meeting began, the president, a mild-mannered guy named Bill, opened the floor for new business. Karen's hand shot up instantly, like an eager student. "I'd like to formally request disciplinary action against Mr. Owens," she announced with theatrical indignation, "for failing to honor a verbal agreement, deliberately disrupting the community, and engaging in inappropriate conduct toward both me and my son and me." Bill peered over his glasses. "This concerns the motorcycle matter?" "Exactly," she pressed on. "He misled my minor child, promised him the vehicle, then backed out. When I attempted to resolve it peacefully, he turned hostile. I remained silent, letting her build her own trap. She ranted for another 5 minutes, casting herself and her son as innocent victims of my supposed instability and selfish habits. She even hinted at concerns for my mental health, which drew awkward shifts and sidelong glances from the others. When she finally wound down, Bill turned to me. "Mr. Owens, care to respond?" I rose smoothly, set my folder on the table, and opened it with deliberate calm. To start, I never promised that young man anything. I have security camera footage showing him trespassing onto my property, pointing at my motorcycle, and declaring, "Mom said you'd give it to me." I also have time-stamped audio recordings of our conversations. I distributed printed stills from the video, copies of the police report confirming no wrongdoing on my part, and the official letter from the state attorney's office stating that Karen's complaint was baseless. One board member leaned over to whisper to Bill, whose brow furrowed deeply. "We weren't informed of any of this," he said quietly. "There's more," I continued, handing out copies of the HOA violation notice she had orchestrated, along with my notarized statement detailing her ongoing pattern of harassment. The room fell completely still. Karen's self-satisfied smirk vanished in an instant. Bill cleared his throat. "We'll need time to thoroughly review these materials. From what's in front of us right now, it looks like this may constitute an abuse of the HOA complaint process." Karen opened her mouth to protest, but Bill lifted a hand. "That's enough. You've had your say. Now, it's our turn to do our job." You'd think being thoroughly embarrassed in front of the entire board would finally silence her, but Karen still had one final move, and she played it as low as possible. 3 days after the meeting, a letter arrived in my mailbox. It wasn't from the HOA or the police. This one came from a law firm, containing a formal cease and desist order accusing me of emotionally manipulating a minor and causing severe distress to both Karen and her son. It demanded I either turn over the motorcycle as compensation or brace for a lawsuit. It was almost comical until I saw the attorney's signature and realized it was legitimate. She had actually hired a lawyer. That's when the bigger picture became clear. This had stopped being about the bike long ago. It was now purely about her ego, her need for dominance, and her inability to accept that someone like me, quiet, self-sufficient, and utterly uninterested in her petty authority, had refused to bow. I called Mark again and read him the entire letter over the phone. He let out a low chuckle. "She's bluffing hard, but by threatening civil action over something the HOA already rejected. She's exposing herself to serious counter-liability, especially given the documented false reports." Together, we crafted a strong response, a formal legal rebuttal supported by every piece of evidence I had, plus a counter notice cautioning her against further harassment and explicitly reserving my right to file my own civil claim. I had it sent through an attorney friend from my veterans group. The moment that response landed in her hands, everything went quiet. No more unexpected visits, no additional letters, no triumphant waves from across the street. It was like watching all the air slowly leak out of an overinflated balloon. The rest of the neighborhood, however, had finally woken up. Word spread quickly. As it turned out, I wasn't the only resident Karen had targeted over the years. She'd badgered people about house paint, grass height, noise complaints, even one neighbor's certified service dog. Most folks had simply endured it, too exhausted or intimidated to push back. But my stand had lit a fuse. At the very next HOA meeting, someone presented a petition signed by more than half the community calling for Karen's immediate removal from the board for abuse of power and repeated harassment. She didn't even bother to attend and defend herself. The vote was swift and unanimous. She was out. As for me, I still own my Harley. I still park it beneath that same old oak tree. I still take it out for a ride every weekend, feeling the rumble and the freedom. Only now, when I fire up that engine and let it roar, not a single complaint comes my way because the woman who believed she could bully it away from me ended up losing her little throne instead. And that, folks, is how I turned the tables on an entitled HOA Karen and kept what was rightfully mine. If you enjoyed hearing this wild but true neighbor saga, go Go ahead and like the video, drop a comment with your thoughts or your own insane homeowner stories, and subscribe for more unbelievable real-life drama. Make sure to tap that bell icon so you never miss an upload. Thanks for watching.